Hi everyone, it's Chris here. This video will take you through the things that you need to do for the final assignment in TWU, the recommendation report, and we'll be having a look at the structure and the language requirements. Okay, so it's due on Monday of week 13. It's worth 50% of the marks for the course. It's about 1,500 words in length, so that means you can write between 1,350 and 1,650. It doesn't include things like the abstract, the list of references, and so on. It just includes everything from the first word of the introduction to the last word of the conclusion. It generally won't include things like tables and figures. And it needs to be submitted, like the previous two assignments, via Moodle, and there's a link to Assessment 3 in the assessment block. You have a choice of two topics, and I'll go through them very briefly in a moment. And these slides are also available on Moodle, so I will talk fairly quickly, but you can download these slides and read through them in your own time. And further advice about writing reports is in Chapter 10 of the study guide. Okay, so topic 1. This is the first of the two options that you can choose from. This one's about a childcare centre that has termites, or they've discovered they have termites, and they're looking to decide whether they should go ahead with fumigation using a particular chemical. So you have to advise the childcare centre whether that would be safe or not. And the second option is to write about a hospital pain management clinic that specialises in back pain, and they're thinking about hiring an acupuncturist, and you have to advise them whether that is a good idea or not. Okay, so the structure of reports. Reports tend to have a common structure. They tend to be formal, divided into different sections with headings and subheadings, and we've done that a little bit of that in the first two assignments. And they tend to address a problem. So you have a particular problem that they look at, and they look for solutions to that. Now, the requirements may vary according to discipline, so we urge you to always check with your undergraduate lecturers exactly what they're looking for, because there are some differences between discipline areas. Okay, so your TWU report should include the following: a title page, a letter of transmittal. That is optional, but we do encourage you to do it. I'll explain a little bit about more about what that is in a moment. An abstract, a table of contents, an introduction, and then the body section. That'll be made up of headings and subheadings that you choose. You can put them under the heading discussion and have them all there, or probably more commonly you would have a number of different headings. The section that follows that would be the conclusion and recommendations. Some reports do separate them out into different headings, but you'll at least need different subheadings, if not different headings. And then we have references, and that's all of the sources that you use for your assignment. And we're not talking about barbecue or tomato. We are talking about the things that you've used to inform your report. And then we have a look at the appendices. Now, not all reports will include an appendices. Appendices are basically extra information like large tables or figures that don't fit in the body of the report itself. Alright, so let's have a look at some of those in detail. So the title page will have an informative title. Not the words informative title, but you'll come up with something that describes what your report is about. And then you'll have who it's prepared for and who it was prepared by. You can have a little bit of fun with those. You can make up the name of the consulting company. You can make up the name of the childcare centre or whatever. And we've seen some pretty interesting ones of those in the past. And you also have the date. Now, the letter of transmittal. Basically, this is a letter to the person who has commissioned the report. And remember, you're acting as a consultant who is writing the report for the childcare centre or the pain management clinic. And basically you say, here's the report you asked for. This is basically what's in it. My recommendations are this, and please contact me if you have any questions, that kind of thing. So in a standard business letter format. Now, the abstract is a summary of the entire report, everything from the introduction through to the recommendations. It should stand alone as a single document. It's often read by people who don't have time to read the whole report, or they're looking to get an overview of the whole thing, and it should have one or two sentences from each major section in the report. It usually appears on a page of its own after the title page and letter of transmittal, but before the table of contents. Some report guidelines will put it in slightly different places, but in this report, that's the place where we want you to put it. And it contains everything, purpose, scope, findings, and recommendations. So they're all the major parts of the report. Now the length can vary. Normally the guidelines are about 10% of the entire word count of a document should be in the abstract. For this TWU assignment, we're looking at about 150, 200 words, something like that. They're not hard and fast rules, but that's a general guideline. Okay, so table of contents. It'll include all of the headings and subheadings. It'll have all of the page numbers. And the page numbers will be aligned on the right. And the best way to do this is to insert an automated table of contents. That way, if you make any changes to your document as you're going, you can update your table of contents with the click of one button rather than going in and formatting it. If you're doing CSU, that's computing studies, you will cover this if you haven't already. So if you have done it, you will cover this. Basically, what you do is in Microsoft Word, you use heading styles for headings, and then you insert a table of contents. And to do that, you go to the References tab and click on Table of Contents. If you have any questions about any of this, please don't hesitate to let us know. Okay, so your table of contents will look something like this. You'll have all of your headings and subheadings. They're all numbered, so 1.0 introduction, 1.1 background, and so on. And then the page numbers are aligned on the right. Now the introduction, it contains background to the report. So who commissioned the report, when, where, and why. So you provide context. Why have you written this report? And then the purpose or the aim of the report. So this is often reflective of the assignment question. It kind of uses the same wording, and basically says what you're going to do. And then the scope of the report. So what does the report cover? And then what does it not cover? That might also be included. So for example, if you're not going to look at the cost of implementing these things, then you could say that that's not included. And you might also talk about other things like whether the evidence was confined to a particular country or not. So you might do some research and find stuff from the UK, but there's nothing specifically on Australia. You would have to say where you got that evidence from. Not all of them include that, but the main thing here is that you cover an overview of what is in the report. Okay, so how is it set out? So it looks something like this. So this is actually the body of the report. You've got the heading, and then the subheadings, and then the text that follows the subheadings. Make sure you've got your margins and using 1.5 spacing, all of those requirements. So the discussion section, it contains most of the words of the report. That's where the bulk of the text will be. It needs to cover, in this assignment, both the positive and the negative aspects of the product or the process, and it must be based on findings of at least 2 peer-reviewed articles, journal articles. So they're academic journals. It might come from a scientific, medical, or chemical journal, something like that. You can have other sources, and ideally you'll probably have around 10 sources for an assignment of this length, and I'd say a minimum of 6, probably a maximum of 18. But at least 2 of them must be peer-reviewed journal articles. And it must be referenced with in-text citations written in Harvard style. There's a link to the Harvard Referencing Guide in the information block on Moodle, and we will be covering referencing in the coming weeks. Now the discussion section will be broken into different headings and subheadings, and it's really up to you what you write for those. But they will need to cover some things. There's some examples on the screen there, but it's up to you what you want to put. And then the conclusion and recommendations. So the conclusion is a summary of the whole discussion and what ideas you can draw from that. And then the recommendations are actions that the childcare centre or the healthcare clinic can take. And they're written like instructions, like we did in Assessment 1, where you start the sentences with a verb. They can be dot point, so you tell the organisation to do something. But make sure that you don't introduce any new material into the conclusion. So it should just be a summary of the main text. The recommendations, of course, is new, but that doesn't contain any referencing. Okay, and the reference list itself will contain all of the sources that you used, listed in alphabetical order, and you'll generally have the authors, the year, the title of the document, the title of the publication, and then if it's a journal article, you'll be looking at volume number, issue number, and page numbers. But as I said, we will be covering referencing in the coming weeks. The appendix is a section at the end of the document. It contains additional illustrations, graphs, tables, statistics that support the text, but they might be too large or too long or detailed to include in the text itself. It appears as a separate section after the list of references. The section is entitled Appendix, and each item appears on its own page, labeled Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C, and so on. And the appendix or appendices, which is the plural of appendix, they're listed in the table of contents. So in the table of contents at the bottom it'll say Appendix A, and then the page number, Appendix B, and then the page number. And page numbers continue right through the appendix. So page numbers start on the first page of the introduction and go all the way through to the end, and they'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but etc. But the pages before the introduction, so they're the preliminary pages, the abstract, letter of transmittal, and those things, they are numbered with Roman numerals, so I, and so on.